Hello, this is Mary Collardetta. Good morning. Today we're looking always at what is God's will. If I know God's will, do I know Him? Well, that's a good question. Do I know Him if I know His will? I know about Him if I know His will. But we have to pray and have communication with the Lord. Then I begin to know Him, and I know that He knows me. It's more than just knowing about Him. We can be very knowledgeable about the Bible and about other events that concern God, His work in this world. But to know Him is to also pray. Spend time with Him, meditate on His Word, commune with Him. That's communion. Today we're looking at the story, we're going to begin the story of Ruth. And sometimes I think it's about the story of Naomi, because the first chapter, well, we're just going to read it. Chapter 1. We're going to take this book a little slow, so it's going to be more than one video if you're interested. So I'm going to read chapter 1. Once in the time of the judges, there was a famine in the land. So a man from Bethlehem of Judah left home with his wife and 2 sons to reside on the plateau of Moab. The man was named Elimelech, his wife Naomi, and his 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephraimites, probably from Bethlehem of Judah. Sometime after their arrival on the plateau of Moab, Elimelech, the husband of Naomi, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. They married Moabite women, one named Orpah, the other Ruth. When they had lived there about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion died there also, and the woman was left with neither her 2 boys nor her husband. She and her daughter-in-laws then prepared to go back from the plateau of Moab, because word had reached her there that the Lord had seen to His people's needs and had given them food. She and her 2 daughters-in-law left the place where they had been living. On the road back to the land of Judah, Naomi said to her daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show you the same kindness that you have shown to the deceased and to me. May the Lord guide each of you to find a husband and a home in which you will be at rest." She kissed them goodbye, but they wept aloud, crying, "No, we will go back with you to your people." Naomi replied, "Go back, my daughters. Why come with me? Have I other sons in my womb who could become your husbands? Go, my daughters, for I am too old to marry again. Even if I had any such hope, or if tonight I had a husband and were to bear sons, would you wait for them and deprive yourselves of husbands until those sons grew up? No, my daughters, my lot is too bitter for you, because the Lord has extended His hand against me." Again they wept aloud. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. "See now," she said, "your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and her God. Go back after your sister-in-law." But Ruth said, "Do not press me to go back and abandon you. Wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there be buried. May the Lord do thus to me, and more, if even death separates me from you." Naomi then ceased to urge her, for she saw Ruth was determined to go with her. So they went on together until they reached Bethlehem. On their arrival there, the whole town was excited about them, and the women asked, "Can this be Naomi?" But she said to them, "Do not call me Naomi," which means sweet. "Call me Mara," which means bitter. For the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why should you call me sweet, since the Lord has brought me to trial, and the Almighty has pronounced an evil sentence on me?" Thus it was that Naomi came back with her Moabite daughter-in-law, Ruth, who accompanied her back from the plateau of Moab. They arrived in Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. So anyways, this is really about Naomi first. So what was God's will for Naomi? What was the path? Remember, God puts us on a path, and we can choose on this path to do right things or to do wrong things. The path is neither right nor wrong. It is a path. Our response with our heart is either towards God in faith, or it is against Him in disbelief. So there was a famine in the land, and so Naomi and her husband, and they had 2 sons, moved to Moab so that they could do okay there. So we know that they were believers in God because they reference Him all the time. The Lord Almighty, it was His hand, that turned against me. Well, they believe in Him. They believe He is. So the Lord led them to Moab. And there the sons married. But it sounds like it says after their arrival, her husband died. So we're not sure how old the sons were at the time when they moved. I'm sure there's lots of other commentaries and historical writings that you can look at that. But the fact is they move there, strange land, not with their people, and her husband dies. So Naomi might be thinking, why would the Lord bring me here and then have my husband die? Now, how am I going to raise my 2 kids on her own? So then it says, when they had lived there about 10 years, and then the boys married women, Moabite women, so they may have been older. And there's always a thing about, well, you should go back and marry women of our own clan, of our own, or at least of the people of Israel. But they married Moabite women. And so now we have Naomi. She has her 2 sons and their wives. And then it says after, when they had lived there about 10 years, they died, the boys. And Naomi was left with neither her 2 boys nor her husband. And in that culture, the boys, especially the oldest boy, was to take care of his mother. So who's going to take care of her? She has her daughters-in-law, but they're Moabites. She admonishes them to go back to their... It's interesting. She doesn't say to their fathers or to their home or the house of their family, but to their mothers. That's because Naomi has been used to being on her own. Even though she has sons, if you're a mom and you have boys, doesn't necessarily mean that you feel like your boys are there to take care of you. After all, they have their own lives. So she was feeling, and she says it pretty early in this chapter, she was feeling bitter. It says here, my lot, no, my daughters, my lot is too bitter for you. She was feeling abandoned by God because of the loss of her husband, a loss of those who would take care of her husband and then her sons. You think, well, is that God's will? Yeah, I think it is God's will. Not just because of what happens later on, but because this happens. And she's struggling with this. We all, some of us might feel very much like a Naomi. Even if we're married, sometimes we feel very alone, very much on our own, trying to raise our family. And you might take note of one other thing that is not mentioned as her having, and that's grandchildren. It doesn't say that. It doesn't mention anything about grandchildren. And when they're on their way, and she tells her daughters-in-law to go back to their homes so that they can get husbands, she doesn't say go back with your children. She just says go back. Get yourself a husband. She's probably thinking, get yourself a husband. Have a family. Don't go with me. You can't. It was tradition that you would marry within that, family. And I'm not going back into all of that law, but the point is that she feels bitter. I don't think she is bitter. And there's a difference. You can feel bitter. She's not railing against God. She just feels, because it says here later on, she says, for the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why should you call me sweet? Since the Lord has brought me to trial, and the Almighty has pronounced evil sentence on me. She knows quite well that it is the Lord's hand. when we say, well, that negative event was of the devil, it can be. But God is far more powerful. And when we belong to God, we are in His hands. And it's not the devil unless the Lord allows it, just like He gives us Job as an example. So we should not be foolish in our thinking to think that it is not God who directs our steps. When we are His, it is His promise to direct our steps. And she had 2 daughters-in-law who loved her. And always, I keep always kind of reminding you to pause me and think about things for yourself. Pray about it for yourself. How do we know that the daughters loved her? Because neither of them wanted to leave her. She treated them as daughters. She loved them, and you can tell they loved her. So she was blessed in that. But the whole cultural thing of having children, grandchildren, she felt barren. And she couldn't give them husbands so that she would have children, grandchildren from her own bloodline. So even if they went with her, well, they wouldn't be of her anymore. So this is all she knows at this time. The people are excited to see when Naomi comes back. But she says, don't call me my name, Naomi, for I am not sweet anymore. The Lord's hand has been bitter against me. And we can feel that way. But we rise up in the morning and we place our trust in Him. I think Naomi did. She entrusted. She had lost her husband, lost her sons, and she was willing to lose her daughters-in-law by telling them to go back. They loved her, and she took 2 women whom she loved and who loved her and was willing to suffer that loss for their sakes. Remember, it wasn't because of her. She said, I don't want you to be unhappy in life, not fulfilled with a family and husband because of me. So then we think about Ruth. Now let's look at Orpah. I think that's her name. Orpah first. She agrees to go back. She kissed her mother-in-law. They probably wept. Yeah, it says again, they wept aloud. She was a good woman. And they wept aloud, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law and went. I'm sure God blessed her because of her kindness and her faithfulness and her willingness to go with Naomi. Ruth, on the other hand, is adamant about going. I will go with you wherever you go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Where you die, I will die. It says, your people will be my people. your God, my God. Ruth gives up all of her life, her family, what she knows, to go and be with Naomi. She loves her mother-in-law, and she's going to not abandon her. And sometimes, we think about, well, we can feel that way. Even when people love us and want to be with us, we can still feel abandoned. And Naomi did. She felt abandoned by God because of the loss she had. But I think she's also trusting God. How do we know that? Well, I can tell you one thing. We'll know it by the next chapters. That's why this is a whole thing. It's about Naomi a lot. And then it's about Ruth. But it's about us. Especially as women. But not all. Because this is a whole chapter is about women. And our dependency on men. And then our dependency on God and how we view God. God is being faithful here. He took away, but he gave her. He took away her males in her life, but he gave her the females. In your life, when you think about those who have abandoned you, whether in death or whether still living, think about those the Lord brings to you, because the Lord is faithful. He's directing Naomi's steps. And with life there is sorrow, but be of good cheer. He, our Jesus, our Lord and God in heaven, has overcome the pain and the suffering that we endure. And he knows it's but for a season. Thank you for watching. I hope you watch the next one. Subscribe if you like.